word to wise. Grass only greener when it's fertilized. Gave them truth in these songs, they prefer to lies. Destiny beautiful, adrift in her purple lies. You can't see me, you Stevie. Wondering how I reach more evolutions than Evie and make it look easy.
What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Ernie, Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. All right, today's video, we're going to be talking about the eternal Gilgamesh. I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about this character to hold an intelligent conversation about him and get you prepared for the upcoming MCU film Marvel's Eternals. We're going to do all that and more right now. But first, if you want to see more awesome videos like this one, make sure you hit that subscribe button because I post multiple videos throughout the week, plus live stream every Saturday, so that way you don't miss anything. Also, if you enjoy the video, I humbly ask that you Hulk smash that like button because it really helps the channel out. That said, let's ponder the question: who is the eternal Gilgamesh? Gilgamesh first appeared in Eternals number 13 in 1977 and was created by the legendary Jack Kirby and Mike Royner. Gilgamesh possesses all the powers of an average Eternal: near immortality, cosmic energy projection, flight, teleportation, telepathy, telekinesis, transmutation of organic and inorganic matter, conjuring of illusions, a regenerative healing factor, and superhuman strength, durability, speed, stamina, reflexes, and agility. Gilgamesh has honed his cosmic energy to focus on raw strength. He is the strongest of all Eternals, able to lift 100 tons without the aid of telekinesis. The upper limit of his strength has yet to be defined. He's also well versed in the ways of hand-to-hand combat and has extensive weapons training. He is capable of using techniques from nearly every combat style ever invented throughout Earth's history. To give you an idea of how powerful Gilgamesh is, not just in terms of like raw strength, but just in terms of how powerful and how skilled of a fighter he is, he's gone toe-to-toe with the likes of Thor, and they fought to pretty much a standstill. I mean, at the end of the fight, Thor did lay him out, but Gilgamesh did not actually quit or give up or yield. A lot of this fight was pretty much predicated around Gilgamesh being under the control of the Prime Celestial at the time. This was all during the Eternal saga, which took place between the pages of Thor number 283 back in 1979 all the way up to Thor number 301 in 1980. Gilgamesh, though not an inherently bad person, gained the ire of Zurus, the Prime Eternal. This was due to Gilgamesh's excessive meddling in human affairs. It's never been revealed the exact details of Gilgamesh's meddling that angered Zurus so much, but whatever it was enough for Zurus to banish Gilgamesh to a section of Olympia for exiles. Despite this, Gilgamesh would eventually be convinced by Sprite to aid the Eternals in the fight to protect Earth from the Deviants' attempt to use an energy bomb against humanity. Oddly enough, the one above all, the literal incarnation of the Roman Catholic God in Marvel Comics, aided Gilgamesh in reaching the bomb as it traveled through space, and Gilgamesh himself destroyed the bomb, nearly killing himself in the process. This led to Gilgamesh's exile being lifted by Zurus because of his bravery. Unfortunately, the act of bravery left him blind for a time. Gilgamesh has the dubious dishonor of being rated the second worst Avenger by website Newsarama in a now deleted article because their website domain has changed. And they are not really wrong here. You know, honestly, while we're on the subject of Gilgamesh's Avengers run, one of the things that I thought was very interesting about it was that it seemed like they were really hard set on making Gilgamesh a household name among the Avengers. It seemed like such a weird choice though, because you already had Thor on the team, and Gilgamesh, well, for all intents and purposes, is kind of a store brand Thor when you really think about it, at least in terms of Marvel Comics. Not only that, but it also kind of seemed like they just really wanted to have a Conan on the team, a Conan with superpowers is, you know, what they were kind of angling at, which didn't really work out. There's even a point a little bit later in his Avengers run where he doesn't even use the armor anymore. He's literally walking around looking like Conan. However, they do give Gilgamesh some moments to shine. He does get opportunities to would wow Thor and make Thor question how he's never met Gilgamesh before. And there's even a scene, a panel in the Avengers comics, I believe it was in Avengers number 300, where Thor literally sits there and wonders, like, how have I never met this guy? And at a later point in that same comic, where he literally tells Gilgamesh that he doesn't understand how he's never met a warrior of Gilgamesh's caliber before in his lifetime. And Gilgamesh is like, maybe you have. Because he's gone by so many different names, as we'll likely talk about here shortly. Gilgamesh even had a point where the Avengers were doing a scrimmage against one another, and it was basically like a moment where Gilgamesh kind of got to show off a little bit of what he could do, but for the most part, he got stunted on by both Captain America, Thor, and Black Panther. But we do get to see a pretty cool moment where Gilgamesh almost lifts Thor's hammer, if not for Thor snatching it away from him before he had the opportunity to fully lift it. But Gilgamesh got a lot further lifting the hammer than most people do. I would even posit that if Thor had not stepped in the way, Gilgamesh probably would have lifted the hammer. Gilgamesh is a warrior who does believe in truth and honor, justice, and all that other sort of stuff. If I had to guess, I'd say that Mjolnir would find him worthy, but maybe not as worthy as Thor. In a way, he kind of technically did in the Eternal Saga prior to Gilgamesh's joining the Avengers. However, when he lifted it, it was not really like a true lift. It was more like he lifted it up to hit Thor, like, kind of like he was brute strengthening it off the ground or out of Thor's grasp, hitting him with it. But once he did so, Mjolnir plummeted to the ground and he was unable to lift it, though this was prior to his joining the Avengers, so maybe he became just that much more worthy later on. And if you're wondering why Thor wouldn't remember encountering someone of Gilgamesh's strength, someone who nearly lifted his own hammer, how Thor couldn't possibly recognize this person, especially someone who joined his own Avengers team, it's because at the time, Gilgamesh wasn't going by the name Gilgamesh. He was going by the name of the Forgotten One. Not only that, he was wearing a full set of body armor that covered him from head to toe. His identity was completely concealed at the time. This is why Gilgamesh plays coy about whether or not Thor and Gilgamesh have met in the past. Even though you would think Thor would remember, considering they met during the Eternal Saga, and Gilgamesh did remove his armor during that saga in front of everybody, Thor included. He even seemed to remember that Gilgamesh had sacrificed himself to save all of humanity back in Eternals number 13, yet somehow he doesn't recognize Gilgamesh when he's on the Avengers. It's a really weird instance of selective memory. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you looked at Gilgamesh's run as an Avenger, his time came to a screeching halt when they faced off against Jenku, who is a member of the Lava Men race, and he kind of went mad for a little bit, and he created this giant lava monster to face off against the Avengers. And it was one of those situations, kind of weird. Yeah, this kind of reminds you why older comics used to be like so strange and unusual, like even going back into like, I think this was roughly around like the 90s. So yeah, it just kind of reminds you how weird shit used to get. But Gilgamesh, while he did get in some good punchies versus this lava monster, the lava monster basically gave him the one-hitter quitter and laid him out. And this was supposed to be like a huge deal because no Eternal had ever been taken down in this fashion before. Like literally, it wasn't like he hit him with a laser beam. It wasn't like he hit him with a lava bomb. He didn't even hit him with a Batista bomb. He literally just hit that dude with the world's strongest punch. And Gilgamesh was laid out. It was like a huge deal because everyone's like, oh my God, he's lifeless. He's not breathing. Oh my God, what are we gonna do? It was unheard of for an Eternal to be incapacitated in that fashion. Even She-Hulk goes on about how, oh my God, they're supposed to have complete and total control of all their molecules and atoms. Even when they're unconscious, why is he not able to use this to get himself back? And even later on, Cersei, one of the most popular Eternals, who does eventually end up joining the team in his stead, even she goes on to say that I've never in all my years seen an Eternal laid this low before to be left in this condition. They made a big deal about it. They had to like oversell it because it was one of those things that Gilgamesh, I would venture to guess, was not a very popular character among the Avengers. I mean, even though it was a kind of a short run, I'm pretty sure the creative team that was working on Avengers at the time, John Byrne, Paul Ryan, and so on, I'm pretty sure they realized Gilgamesh being on the team wasn't the move, and that's why he was so hastily replaced by Cersei after barely having a 10 or 11 issue run as an Avenger. During Neil Gaiman's Eternals run, when all Eternals on Earth were memory wiped and lived life as normal humans, Gilgamesh worked as a circus strongman. It was around this time he was discovered by Ajax, who awakened him to his true memories, albeit much of it was manipulated to paint Makari as a villain. This is what led to the confrontation between Gilgamesh and Makari and his ultimately killing Makari. He would later get his true memories back, but by then, Athena was already in the process of killing him for having murdered Makari. Gilgamesh's true name is unknown, but he has gone by many names as Eternals are wont to do. He's been called the Beast of Legend, Beloved of the Muses, the Lost Eternal, the Dragon Slayer, the Hero of Sumer, Hero, just hero, O Guerrero, which I believe is translated from Portuguese as being warrior. He's also been known as the Forgotten Nemesis and the Forgotten One. He's also been known as King Gilgamesh during his time as King of Uruk in Sumer. He's also been mistaken for the heroic figures Atlas, Hercules, Beowulf, and Samson. Another interesting thing about Gilgamesh that most Eternals cannot say is that Gilgamesh was not initially aware he was an Eternal. He spent much of his life questing for eternal life, not realizing he already had it. He's also responsible for completing certain legendary labors for Hercules and/or aiding him with others. Gilgamesh once wore a more traditional barbarian garb, even later adopting more Viking-like armor during his time with the Avengers. He's since changed to a more modern version of his Viking-style armor with a black and silver motif and a featureless iron mask. Gilgamesh, as of Kieran Gillen's run on Eternals, has been more of an outsider than anything else, not really lingering with the main team, but acting outside of it. He did interfere in what was a mock assassination attempt by Cersei meant to lure Gilgamesh out into the open. This was because he was thought to be the supposed traitor among the Eternals, but he in fact was not the one who sabotaged the machine. It was Phastos, though even Phastos isn't truly the traitor. Druig is. Ma Dong-suk, or as he's credited more recently, Don Lee, who many of you may know from the movie Train to Busan, The Good, the Bad, and the Weird, The Neighbors, and The Outlaws, will play Gilgamesh in the upcoming MCU film, Marvel's The Eternals. Interesting sidebar about Gilgamesh's casting: Gilgamesh is heavily implied to be Sumerian in the comics, which technically would make him Iraqi, but he has often appeared as a bog standard white male character for much of his time in the Marvel Comics universe. In the MCU, he is going to be played by a Korean American actor. Another interesting factoid about Gilgamesh in the MCU is that he is seemingly romantically linked to Angelina Jolie's Athena in the film. This was not a pairing that was ever depicted in the comics. Beyond the upcoming movie, Gilgamesh has not appeared in any media outside of comics until now. All that aside, Gilgamesh is a weird character for me. I've never really particularly cared about him, and even when he made his triumphant return in Kieran Gillen's Eternals run, I couldn't help but feel a little cold towards it because I just never really cared about him. I honestly think the most interesting thing he ever did was in Charlie and Daniel Knopf's Eternals run where he killed Makari. It's honestly the most interesting he's ever been to me. And coming back now, I'm kind of warming up to the character, but I'm actually more curious to see the MCU version of this character, to see how different he's going to be from the comic book version, because I don't know, I just don't see the Gilgamesh of the comics translating terribly well in the MCU. I feel like he would be a very boring character if that was the case. Though that said, I am curious to wonder if somewhere down the line that the character will adopt a costume similar to what he wears in the current Eternals run, because as costumes go, and I haven't really talked about this very much in any of the other videos, because for the most part, most of the characters are wearing costumes very similar, or at least vaguely similar to what they wear in the comics, but Gilgamesh, and maybe I would also throw in Kingo for that matter, those are characters who are wearing costumes that are really nothing like their comics counterparts. So I'm curious to see if that will ever happen. I wonder if we'll ever see Don Lee running around in a black and silver Viking suit and a silver featureless mask. We'll see how that plays out. But anyways, tune in next time for my video where I'm going to be breaking down the eternal Phastos, who's going to be played by Brian Tyree Henry in Marvel's The Eternals. Anyways, if you enjoyed this video, Hulk smash that like button and make sure to share it all over the internet with all your friends so they'll know how you leveled up your comic book big brain in regards to the eternal Gilgamesh. On your way out, make sure to hit that subscribe button and let me know what you thought about the eternal Gilgamesh. Have you always known about him, or are you today years old finding out about him? Keep it plus ultra and sound off in the comments.